Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome.
It didn't suck.
All right, let's hit the road here. In the mood, man. You're gonna put me into like a sleepy snacking before the episodes. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't know if that's a good
gotta
thing.
feed you. That's an impulse,
Yes, I appreciate it. It was phenomenal.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome back to the Okayest Cook podcast. I'm your host, Chris Wansettler, here on location. We've got a super cool guest, Mr. Chris. And I do this every single time. Pronounce your last name for me.
Kyer.
Chris Kyer. Yes.
Real simple. Just another 4-letter word.
It's I'm kind of notorious for asking how to pronounce names and then immediately forgetting.
It's okay.
We talked about this earlier. I'm a photographer. I'm a very visual, so sounds and words go in one ear and straight out the other. Yes, but yeah, we are in your beautiful kitchen here.
Oh, thank you.
And listeners, you cannot smell what's going on here, but we just snacked a ton.
Yeah, when are they going to invent smell-o-vision for these things? Because
when it comes out, we'll be millionaires. Well, assuming
if
we invent it.
Yes.
Yes, but it has been an exquisite morning. Gosh, we've been here for a while now, and just chit-chatting, talking, eating, and it's been glorious.
Making some sausage, cooking some sausage.
Well, eating sausage. We'll talk about the cooking here,
Sure.
here in a little bit. But no, it's been phenomenal. Hopefully, I can get you to pitch in on a recipe of the week for our newsletter. If you have not signed up for our weekly newsletter, Second Helpings, it's basically just a rundown right now of previous episodes and then just a random recipe of the week that I've kind of tweaked and modified and made okay from probably an exquisite chef. It's my version of other dishes. I just did a venison shank Irish stew that came out in preparation for St. Patrick's Day. That turned out
saw that.
Turned out all
Good.
right. It was
Looked
good.
good.
Tasted good.
Good.
As one says, it fills the belly and makes a turd. It fills a hole and makes a turd. So it was good. It was solid. Yeah. The soda bread turned out a lot better than I thought it was going to. So,
Nice.
So that was
Had you made it
beautiful
before?
addition. No, I just Googled, hey, what goes with Irish stew? And soda bread popped up. So
It's
I got all those ingredients. Let's try it.
It's great.
So, yeah, real crumbly, real sweet.
Kind of like a giant biscuit.
Yeah. It looked like a giant scone for the most part. So, beautiful combination to that dish. And I guess that's a good segue into our notable meals, another phase of the show that I often neglect. But I will say that was my notable meal, was making the venison shank Irish stew. Loosely, it could be like Irish ossobuco because it's kind of similar.
Why not?
It's shank.
It's the right cut.
It's the shank. It had some tomato paste in it, and that's about the extent of the ossobuco.
At that point, you asked, what made it Irish?
Turnips. Just it was Irish
turnips, yeah.
Irish stew recipe that I
Did you add a
tweaked.
little beer when you were cooking?
Yeah,
it?
a lot of
there you
Guinness.
go.
Oh yeah.
There you go. You got
Very
Irish then.
And it worked. So that was my notable meal. Have you eaten or dreamt or seen anything cool lately that you want to talk about? It could be something you made. It could be something that you ate somewhere else.
This weekend, just a couple days ago, I went pig hunting this last winter.
Nice.
I went for some wild boar, and I was successful. Got a big pig, and as I'm butchering it, one of the things I set a lot aside to make sausage. We'll talk about that,
Yes.
but I kept the shanks, especially the rear shanks. I wanted kept whole.
Okay.
Because I wanted to do like you. I wanted to cook those shanks. I love slow cooking a shank. The meat.
Yes.
The meat's incredible when it's cooked to the point of just falling apart. And so I made sort of a version of Ragu al cinghiale, which is wild boar ragu.
Oh man.
And it's got all the classic ingredients of the mirepoix and red wine and stock, and cooked that all, and it was in the oven for 5.5 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Until literally you're reaching with a pair of tongs and the meat just shreds with the tongs. You pick the bones out and you pick some of the, it had some bay leaves in there I need to hunt down and get out of there. But once that was all done, I served it over some orchetti. I should have taken the time to make some pappardelle. I didn't, but I was already tapped out for projects that day. But even with some good quality dried pasta, it was delicious.
Sounds
and
incredible.
It was everything I'd been dreaming of. That's the thing. Sometimes you go into the field hoping, oh, I'll get this or I'll get that, or maybe that day you're looking for something to put on the wall. All I could think about when I was hunting this pig was, I can't wait to make a ragu with this. I want that. It's so
Get those
satisfying.
shanks, yes.
The shanks, and I used one. I still got one more. So I'll have a chance to do something with that at some point.
Yeah, I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say like shank is like probably top 5 cuts for me. Like I absolutely love shanks.
I agree.
And like pig trotters, like making stews and stuff, like
Yes.
1,000,000%. Like you're missing out if you have not used the foot.
It's okay. I'll admit it's incredibly difficult to do it with the wild things because like wild boar, they're so hairy. The idea of scalding them and cleaning them off just isn't there like it is with domestic hogs.
I've heard it's not super appealing in person.
Well,
but if you can get
I've
past,
never done it, but I've heard it too. It's just not what you want to do. It's smelly. It's nasty. It's way more tedious than what you'll see if you ever see it on TV because they're editing it down to 30 seconds. No, it takes hours.
Yeah.
But for a domestic hog, it's really worth it because the skin's an amazing part of a pig.
Yeah.
But with the wild one, now you're going to skin it just like you would a deer or bear or any of that. So getting down to the feet with that's hard, but you can get all the way down to the hock, to the ankle, and get all of that skinned out and sawn off above the foot, which is going to be a pain, and still get lots of that lovely rich collagen, which is incredible. I make venison stock every year from whatever I'm lucky enough to harvest. I made boar stock from the bones. When I cut this one up, I got all those leg bones and front leg bones, right here, hind leg bones, all of it, and split them in half to get that marrow out of there.
Yes.
And you have a little bit of roast, and then a nice long slow cook with a couple of ingredients. I made you do a regular stock, which is just like a bone broth kind of thing, or I made a ramen stock. Get a little mushroom in there, some ginger, some sea kelp, things like that that'll give it that slightly more Asian flavor in the profile. And the great part is you can make a bunch of it. I made, I think, 2 gallons of it. It freezes well. So you eat some then, divide it up. And so I got, those things in the fridge for later. Make a little ramen with some wild pork.
Nice.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, I just saw on Instagram yesterday a guy who freeze dried all his bone broth.
Oh, I saw that too.
Made his own powder.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's next level. I want to do that so bad. But
yeah,
where's this machine gonna go?
We're
kind of out of
incredible
space.
Concept because you can buy that stuff.
Yeah.
But how much of this do you want to do? No.
Yeah.
You're always going to have a better quality product when you source it yourself and you make it yourself because you're going to invest. The one ingredient that people don't talk enough about is time. That's an ingredient.
Yeah.
Time matters for your cooking process and your making process of food.
Yeah.
And it's something that most manufacturers aren't willing to spend because time is money.
100%.
And that would make it a product that's so expensive you couldn't really touch it.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you're not making it for somebody else. So you don't need to include preservatives or anti-caking
Good point. Yeah.
measurements.
Yeah.
So it's going to just taste better because there's less in it.
Yeah.
There's more beautiful stuff and less.
Yeah, more good stuff,
Additives,
less not stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
What's that old expression? If your grandmother didn't use it in her cooking, you probably don't want to eat it.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. Well, going back to basics here.
Sure.
I don't know how to segue into our topic today, so I guess we're just going to go straight into it.
Sure, have at it.
So we kind of met on the internet.
That's right.
It's one of those. I saw your page. I followed your page. Love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And I reached out and I said, "Hey, let's do a podcast." And we had something scheduled for a remote session, and then you tagged another Indianapolis chef in one of your recent events. And there's a segue. We'll talk about that. And I was like, wait a second. Where are you located? And Chris, you came back and said, I'm Central Indiana. I'm like, I'm Central Indiana too.
I know it was a surprise.
So I immediately canceled the remote session. I was like, we're doing this in person.
Yep. And
here we are. Yeah. So again, thank you very much for opening up your kitchen and I can't thank you enough for that meal you just shared with me. It was exquisite.
Oh, thank you. Really.
But yeah, do you want to talk about the event that led to all of this?
Sure. The event, by unanimous vote, we decided to name this in about its third or fourth year, the Abe Froman Invitational. And anybody who's seen Ferris Bueller knows the reference. It's, Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago.
Yes.
And when I started this back in 2006, I was living in the suburbs of Chicago. I was, in fact, I could walk in about 10 minutes to Cameron's house, the glass house in the woods at the Ferrari,
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I've seen it many times. And so it seemed to make sense. It was tied, to our geography. It was tied to the concept and sort of the, that audacious impersonator that is Ferris.
Yes.
I'm the Sausage King. So it was kind of a joke, but it also made sense because that's what we do. I get together with a bunch of my guy friends. Back then, there were several of us who hunted, and we're looking for something to do with the grindable parts of a deer that was different than just grinding it up with some bacon and calling it good, for whether it's for red sauce or burgers or meatloaf, what have you. And I liked all that, except you get bored with it. Yeah. You get bored with the same thing over and over again. And even you try, okay, I'm going to try a different recipe for meatloaf, or I'm going to try a different recipe for meatballs, or what have you. It still becomes sort of thing, what else can I do? And I started looking around, and my dad actually pushed me. He said, well, make sausage. You make the sausage. And so I started off, a little home-sized grinder and a little tiny stuffer attachment for it.
Okay.
And it went well enough. We'll come back to my first efforts at sausage making. They weren't that great. But then it became a buddy of mine who was also a hunter said, look, why don't you do more? Why don't we do more of this? And I said, well, because the equipment is not cheap.
Yeah.
There's a lot of it, and it's expensive to step up to a real, high-end product.
And it's not an easy process.
No.
As we'll get into.
And he said, look, I'll go halvesies with you. I said, okay.
Yes.
So, he'll buy half the equipment, and that saved a lot. And so we started, and, talking about this other people. As we'd make sausage, we'd share what we were doing with some friends, and it became, well, can I come?
Yes.
And I said, well, yeah, sure. And so it went from what do we do with our extra venison or, our ground venison that we want to do something different with to let's get 8, 10, 12 buddies together for 2 days to make this delicious product in
Yes.
8, 10, 12, 15 varieties, depending. But also have a great time doing it. And we do. We have a lot of fun. Some guys come, they don't even want the sausage when they leave. They're like, I had fun.
No, really?
Well, they're few. And so that's where that all began. And
Love it.
I've had people now reach out to me, not unlike yourself, via the internet to say, how do I get an invite to the Abe Froman Invitational? And I said, show up. If you really are serious, DM me and I'll send you the address. Come on down.
Yeah.
And I'll show you, because a number of people, like one of the first to do that was a guy from downstate Illinois who reached out to me and said, I've tried making venison sausage and it turned out terrible. And I said, well, why don't you come up here? I can probably teach you in a day what you need to know to do this right for yourself. And another Chris, you, me, and this guy's named Chris too. He hasn't been since. We're still in touch. We're still friends, but he hasn't come back because it's a hike.
Yeah.
But he learned what he needed. Now he makes sausage at home. Yeah, I taught my way out of a job. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is beautiful. I love that aspect. And commensality is a big part of our show.
Right.
And what we do. And to those who don't know, have not looked at our website or heard much of us talking, commensality is just the act of eating together.
Oh,
so
okay.
it's just sharing a meal. In my mind, anytime you have a cookbook or a recipe from someone else, you're sharing a meal with them, like through space and time.
Oh, that's nice. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's really cool.
Because food is, we've talked about this a ton, food is a collaboration.
Yes.
Sausage making needs to be a collaboration. Yes, you can do it by yourself, but it is infinitely more enjoyable.
Much.
Infinitely easier
Yes.
when you have a team.
It is.
And we can start that conversation of yeah, but basically, how do you make sausage? And this is a topic that could be its own show.
Oh yeah,
So-
I could go on for a while, but
So we're just we're not
How do
even,
you
we're
make
going to nick the
sausage?
surface. We're going to nick the surface a tiny bit. Maybe we'll talk about some tips, some hot tips on like
Sure.
maybe here's how you could start doing it better. Maybe if you have tried making sausage and you did not like the way it came out,
Yeah.
here's maybe a couple of things that you've done wrong. And again, I'm like you, or I'm like the guy that reached out. Like,
yeah.
yes, I've made it. It has not come out, I think, quite to my expectations. But I'm getting better. Like it's
Everything is learning. Everything.
yes.
I've been cooking for, well, I'm going to give away my age now, 50 plus years. All right. I've been doing it a long time, but I didn't start cooking seriously until I was in my 30s. That's when I actually really tried to get better, made a conscious effort at
Nice.
learning technique, getting better at it. And then I've, been afforded the opportunity of both the challenge of people who know what they're doing, working with me and or challenging me to do better.
yeah.
And of course, the internet came along and the YouTube videos and
helps.
things like that. That helps too. Because before it's like you'd read a recipe and you go, well, what does that really mean? You could look up a definition,
Yep.
or cooking specific definition, and you'd still be like, yeah, but what does that mean?
I get it. Yeah, because
So-
your ingredients aren't identical to their ingredients.
Well, that's the other thing. When you're in wild game cooking, when I
do I
started
tweak?
when I started doing that 30 years ago, I asked, so the guy who got me back into hunting, because I'd gone hunting with my grandfather and we got squirrel hunting and that kind of thing. And by the way, a young squirrel, chicken fried, still one of the best things
Divine.
you'll ever eat, right? But he'd given up deer hunting by that point. And so there was never, and I didn't grow up around eating venison or anything. I had no idea how to cook it. When I started hunting again as an adult, my buddy who started me in this going, I asked him, I said, so how do you cook this? I mean, and he said, well, the good cuts, like a backstrap, tenderloin, that kind of thing. He says, I like keep it simple. Salt, a little pepper, maybe some garlic powder, bacon grease or butter, and just fry it off. It can be rare. So just fry off both sides really quick. Keep it rare, medium rare. And to this day, I mean, come on, what's wrong with that? Nothing. That's a great way to make a piece of backstrap or a tenderloin or even a nice steak out of the top round kind of thing. But what do you do with the rest of it? Well, his answer was you take that roast or those chunks and you put it in a crock pot with some Lipton onion soup, enough water to cover, put it on low, and when you come home from work, it's done.
Oh man.
And you know what? It's not bad. I like it. It's a good way to cook venison.
But it's not
God,
this.
it gets old fast.
I get that. Yeah.
And so it becomes, how do I adapt recipes? And certain things you can do a classic recipe like the ossobuco. You can do that and just use venison instead of pork in your shank, and it's going to taste great. You don't really have to make any alterations. But to come back to the sausage making, yeah, there you get some interesting things. Some recipes were made for venison and for venison sausage. And some recipes, and they're rare, are like beef-based or lamb-based. Like, do you know merguez?
The name. No.
Yeah, and for all the native speakers, I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but sorry. Merguez is a lamb sausage from like Morocco, northern Africa, and a little bit in southern Spain. You'll see it show up. And so as a lamb sausage, it's almost venison already. Those are pretty comparable meats in terms of the fat on them, meaning the quality of the fat. And very different from pork. So when you make a merguez with venison, you don't have to alter the spice a lot or the way you make it a lot. You have to add some outside fat. Venison does not have enough fat to be good sausage by itself. A good sausage is going to be 20% dead minimum fat. Otherwise,
minimum,
that's a minimum. It's going to, and at 20%, it's probably going to be a fairly dry sausage, or it's going to be a cooked sausage. And when I say cooked, I'm talking like summer sausage. When I make summer sausage, it's like 80% venison and 20% fat. It can be pork or beef, doesn't matter. I happen to like beef for the flavor in my summer sausage. But you need at least 20. For a lot of other sauce, a breakfast sausage, Italian sausage, things like that, you're going to want 30% fat. And as a lot of people know, venison is usually 3 to 5% intramuscular fat. That's it.
If that, yeah.
If that. And you really don't want to include any fat trim if your deer has it, because it's just too waxy. There's I believe it's stearic acid is the component that makes it super waxy, and all fats have a little bit of it, but like pork fat, duck fat, they don't have as much.
Okay.
So that's why the fat's a lot. It's less waxy and less dense, less hard.
Yeah.
Even sometimes melting a little bit at room temperature. That you'll see like duck fat, pork fat. Those have that beautiful quality of being a low waxy fat content compared to beef fat or deer fat. So when you're up to 30%, now you've got a really nice juicy sausage.
Yes.
And you can go higher. There's like some of the German wursts, they're like 50% fat content. They're super rich, but you can taste it. And it's not greasy. It's not, it's just rich and lovely because you've created an emulsion that suspends that fat in a particular way with all your seasonings.
You might have created an emulsion.
The idea is to create an emulsion. And if you don't overcook it, because a lot of these sausages are pre-cooked, like a lot of the wursts they're poached. And there's a big difference between truly poaching something, to 140, 142 internal and boiling it to 160 degrees internal.
Yeah.
You've done that, you've wrecked your sausage. It's gone. Poaching sausage is more like 175, 180 degree water. Sausage goes in and, start checking it regularly. And when it hits 140, you're done. That's it. Get it out of there, get it in an ice bath, stop the cooking process. And that's going to keep all that, keep that emulsion together. Because my first efforts, we'll talk about the very first time I made sausage. It was horrible. I'm telling you, it was terrible. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It was terrible. And it was terrible for a number of reasons. One, I thought adding water in any form was bad. And the pre-made spice kit that I'd bought said water optional.
Okay.
It did. So you can add water or not. And I thought, well, I'm not going to add water. That's going to dilute the flavor.
Why would it say optional?
I have no idea. Because everything I've learned in the 20 years since says you always add some liquid. It doesn't have to be water. It could be wine or vinegar is another common one. You see a lot of red wine vinegar or just plain vinegar. Sure. These are great ingredients to add to create more flavor and or an effect. Whenever you add certain ingredients, you're going to affect the grind.
Yeah.
But with water, it's mostly if you're adding ice water, it helps keep the meat cold while you're working it. And you always have to stay cold. You don't want to break your emulsion if it's an emulsified. You certainly don't want to break the bond to the proteins, which can all happen when you're adding warmer water. Your temperatures come up. It just things fall apart and get gross, and you wind up with less of a force meat than a kind of a nasty crumble. Not good. So I didn't add any water. Well, what happens is you're adding all these you got pepper and spice, whether it's sage and ginger and nutmeg and things like that. You're adding, say, for a breakfast sausage. When you add all those, where's the water to moisturize and hydrate those spices coming from? Well, if you don't add it in, it's definitely coming from out of the meat. And you think, well, it's all in the sausage, but it doesn't work that way. It pulls that moisture out and then it holds it and doesn't allow back into the cellular structure of the sausage. And so you get a dry, kind of unpleasant taste or unpleasant, feeling in the texture. It's just not good. Yeah. So I didn't add water. Big mistake. I didn't grind it correctly. And you'd think, well, grinding is grinding, right? Well, no, it isn't. It's more than just picking the size of the plate. It's, yes, it's keeping it cold again. Everything needs to be cold. But it's also, like some of my sausages like twice grind fully. Some of them, like an Italian sausage, has a little coarser texture. You run it through the plate once, then you take half of it, run it through the plate again. And so that gives you a variation in texture to help it bind up. And then finally, mixing it thoroughly. If you have a mechanical mixer, brilliant. Yeah. If you don't have a mechanical mixer, then you just got to, kind of like kneading dough or making pasta by hand. You just got to keep going until you got nothing left. Yeah. And then go a little more. Because if you don't develop that, then it's never going to happen.
Sure.
So sausage making, chemistry-wise, what you're doing by adding salt to the ground meat is you're drawing out a protein called myosin. And myosin, for analogy's sake, it's like gluten in flour. It's elastic, like most proteins, but it binds everything together and gives you, when properly agitated, it gives you that beautiful sort of like spongy sounds bad, but I don't know how to say it. Rubbery, spongy, they all sound gross, right? But it's that give. Same like,
But
again,
like when
when you've seen it, and that's one of the things that, when I've pointed it out to people as they come and, come to the Froman and say, what am I doing wrong? I said, well, when you mix it together, do you get this? And he's like, no. I said, that's one of the things you did wrong then.
Yeah.
You got to keep going until it's like literally, especially I use the, the mixing bins that have the paddle in it and stuff, but it's still hand cranked. And for certain sausages, I've told guys, they're like, is it done? I said, can you still turn it? And they're like, yeah. I said, can you turn it easily? He said, no, but keep going until you almost can't turn it anymore.
Nice, yeah.
Until it really tightens up. Because as our mutual acquaintance, Mr. Chef Steve says, turns out the protein molecule of myosin, it actually kind of looks like two comb coming together, right, like this. And there's a lot of flexibility in there when it's like, but as you add the mechanical motion of massaging it or mixing it, however you want to think about it, they tighten up, they come together tighter and tighter and tighter until they're like firmly together. And that gives you that super elastic quality in the sausage.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of salt. You have to have salt to extract it from the meat properly. But really, it's that mechanical action of working it together that makes the protein tighten up the way you want it to.
Yeah.
So that's, again, that's one of those things where like, you're never going to get that from a cookbook. I don't think
I
you really get it
written
well
that,
from a video because it's hard to see. I mean, even when you I make a lot of fresh pasta. I have made bread, although, I did that years ago. But, when you remember in COVID when everybody went crazy making sourdough, I kind of just chuckled. I went, oh yeah, been there, done that. Yeah, okay, it's fun. I get it. Making your own bread is wonderful. It smells great, right? But that same thing of how do you translate all that to real world? That's why when I have the opportunity and people are able, I say, come up.
That's awesome.
Come to the Froman and you'll see it. You'll feel it.
Yeah. Well, just like I said, you know the textures you're looking for.
Sure.
Especially if you've made sausage, like me. One of my first rounds of sausage, I think. So I followed Hank Shaw's recipe, and he has a beautiful, beautiful, basically an article on sausage making that breaks all this stuff down. And the first thing that was drilled into my head was cold. So 100% you need to be, if your hands don't hurt when you're mixing this stuff up, it's not cold enough. It's basically what I got. But I don't recall reading that mixing process. I knew it was important, but I didn't know it was quite that important. So on my sausage, I think that's maybe one of the first steps that led to not a successful sausage was mixing time. Yeah. So I could spend a lot more time mixing. I think would help a ton. I did know about the moisture. So I didn't make that mistake. Again, Hank did a great job of, laying
Hank's
all
great.
out.
I mean, he's definitely, he's one of the trailblazers / leaders of what we're doing in terms of cooking wild game and doing it well. Yeah. Not settling for, Lipton onion soup in the crock pot, but actually making really good food with it. And
it's beautiful. Like his books are awesome.
Yeah.
But again, he's got one of the most comprehensive guides I've ever seen on making sausage. And it's beautiful. But like I said, it's not in person.
Yes.
He's not right next to me to say like, oh, hey, like we should do this or you should do that. Or if it doesn't turn out perfect, like where did I go wrong? It could have been a million points.
Troubleshooting is where you really find out what's going on.
Yeah.
If it turns out right the first time, ooh, lucky you. Congratulations.
Right.
But then when it goes wrong, what happened? And I've had stuff go wrong with me, still. I miss something in my thinking. Like, so I told her earlier, wine's a common ingredient, especially for Italian sausages, to add a little bit of flavor. But, so that myosin molecule, one of the things that breaks that down are certain things like alcohol and vinegar will actually break down that molecule.
Okay.
So do you like chorizo?
Yeah.
Okay. One of the, Mexican chorizo, when it's cooked, it actually, you take it out and it like crumbles, right?
It does, yeah.
vinegar.
Okay.
It has all of its moisture, or a big portion of its moisture comes from vinegar.
Okay.
So that's hydrating the chilies and the other things and the garlic and everything in there. That's where that moisture to hydrate them is coming from. But it also breaks down the myosin to give you that crumbly texture. And if you don't use it, it falls. It sticks together, and you're like, "This is weird. It's a weird chorizo."
Yeah.
Well, the same thing is true with the Italian sausage. A good Italian holds together better, but it's got a crumble to it. It's because it's made with wine.
Okay.
And alcohol has that same effect. So it can go the wrong way too. So I make a sausage. It's definitely one of the sausages that I cannot not make at my little party,
right?
Or I'll get in trouble with too many people, including the most important one, my wife. It's I call it the pheasant mushroom sausage. It's essentially a bratwurst, a very fine grind that's made with pheasant, a little bit of chicken, thighs, some pork fat, and a duxelle, a mushroom and shallot preparation. And it all goes through the grinder, and then you get a little cream in there, and you mix it all up, and it's wonderful. It's a poached sausage, so it goes in the freezer fully cooked. All you have to do is take it out, warm it up, and brown it. Like we did that this morning with some of these.
Yeah, Chris shared some earlier, and it was divine.
Thank you.
It was very good.
Yeah, this is, like I said, this is a sausage that I got asked one year. He said, you're gonna make the pheasant sausage, right? And I said, no, it's been a terrible year. I didn't get out much. We weren't very successful. He says, I'll buy some. I went, what? He says, I'll buy some pheasant. You got to make that sausage.
Yes.
Like, okay.
Yeah.
So one of my guys,
Upduck, for all you pheasant hunters, if you have not made this sausage, connect with Chris. Yeah. Yeah. You need this in your life. It is exquisite.
Thank you.
It is exquisite. So.
Yeah. That is. So literally, we bought pheasant in order to make it because it would not taste. You can make it as a chicken sausage. Nah. By the way, you can add any of those white meat game birds in it. I've put in, this pheasant usually is the majority, but I've put in chucker, quail.
Okay.
Although normally not. I mean, unless I shot one to pieces and picking it apart, I'm not putting a quail in sausage. You could do it with turkey, but I don't think it would taste nearly the same.
Okay.
Sidebar. Well, I messed this up one time. So the duxelle, which is mushroom, shallots, a little garlic, herbs, all of that, Worcestershire, all cooked down into a beautiful little coarse sauce. Well, it's made with Madeira. That's really the key. Any duxelle has a sweet wine component, sherry or marsala or Madeira. But obviously, when you're cooking it, all the alcohol cooks off.
Sure.
Well, one year, I don't know why I did it. I just brain damage that day. I decided I wanted a little more jolt to the Madeira quality. Okay. And I put in some extra Madeira, not in the duxelle. I didn't cook it out.
Oh.
That sausage was bad.
Oh, no.
It made it grainy. It took that beautiful, light pudding-like texture of the sausage as it should be, like you had today. And it just had a grainy quality it's amazing how important the feel of something on your tongue and in your mouth, how texture matters so much.
Oh, yeah.
And when that came apart, all the flavor was there, but the texture was wrong. And it was just, yeah. No one is above mistakes. Certainly not me. And that was a big mistake.
So,
that was a.
So keep the alcohol out.
Keep the alcohol out, unless the flavor. You want the flavor. If you want more alcohol, which I did, I wanted the flavor of the alcohol. So now I add a little bit more than I used to. But it's always cook that alcohol off. Sure. The flavor you want, the alcohol you don't. It'll wreck your sausage.
Well, talk about the white sausage real quick. If you have not had like a white brat, it's like it's different. Yeah. And like the texture is weird and different, but beautiful. Like it's not a quote unquote brat. Like
no,
you said,
it's not.
Creamy.
It's looser than that. It's a cream. You're right. Creamy is a good
pudding.
description.
You mentioned pudding.
I did.
Like it's very much that. It's a very delicate, silky kind of. I'm not good with words. Like what else? I mean, it's almost like a pate.
I start to lose
quality,
things.
But.
Yeah, it's if you've ever. The best I can do with these things is related to things you might have had.
Sure.
If you've had boudin, which is a rice and liver and pork sausage.
Yeah.
If you've been to Louisiana or down south, and if you haven't had boudin and you go down there, crime. Get it. It's delicious.
Yeah.
Don't be put off by the idea that it has liver in it. It's a great sausage.
It's beautiful.
But because you've got this super overcooked rice in it, it's no longer little grains. It's like coming apart. And the liver, which doesn't have, so anytime you get into organ meats with sausages, there's no myosin involved. That's only in skeletal muscle.
Okay.
So it becomes a much lighter texture right there. And in fact, a lot of times boudin, they'll squeeze it out of the casing and smear it on bread or biscuit or whatever. You don't have to eat it from the casing. Eating it out of the casing is kind of common. And there's a German sausage, Weisswurst, same thing, super light, super creamy, and you don't actually eat the casing. You're not meant to. Because that's just kind of off-putting texture-wise. What you really want is that creamy pudding-like meat inside.
Gotcha.
I mean, if you like pudding meat, which I never did, and still don't.
It's different.
It's not. Yeah, it is different. It's not my thing. My mom always loved it. Some other people I met love it. Where you take the potted meat, you smear it on something, and they love it.
I'm
it's
50-50.
That same kind of thing.
Situational. Yeah.
It's situational. Like this is a little more. My pheasant sausage is a little firmer than that.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's in that same ballpark of being super light. And again, it's by poaching it, you lock that emulsion in to where when you cook it, whether it's on a grill or in a skillet, is all you're really doing is putting a little bit of brown on it and warming it up. And boom. I mean, technically you could eat it cold, and I have, but
you might not want to.
Yeah, browning adds flavor, let's face it.
Yeah.
And also, we were talking about texture, temperature matters too.
100%.
I'll make kielbasa, which I make. It eats great cold. It's a great snack cold, but you can also heat it up and serve it with some pierogi, cabbage, sauerkraut, whatever you like. Doesn't matter. You brown it up. Again, it changes the flavor, but in a good way.
Yeah. Well, let's. I'm going to segue into grinding real quick. So you mentioned emulsification.
Yeah.
One of the first sausages I attempted was making hot dogs. And I very quickly found out that is one of the most challenging things you can do, because how you grind the meat matters a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And you've already mentioned about keeping two different types of grind.
Yeah,
one fine, one coarse. Chris Ely over at Smoking Goose here in town talked about that a lot. You want those different textures, the different size of your grind.
Well, it depends on the sausage.
It's true, yeah.
So like if you're doing a kielbasa, you want an emulsion to suspend large chunks of meat in.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the two, super fine grind for like half the batch, and then the other half is going through the biggest plate you've got.
Yeah.
So that you get this, when you bite into it, you get these chunks of meat or chunks of fat. If you do it all the same grind, it doesn't taste the same.
Yeah, it's very different.
Same spices do not taste the same when it's ground differently.
It's like the difference between a hot dog and a brat. If you're not super hip on sausage names and terms.
That's good. Yeah.
So like I said, very, very unanimous consistency with the hot dog. So very emulsified.
Yeah. And that's the thing so when hot dogs and super fine sausages like that are made, and then it is an emulsion, but you don't have to be that fine to create an emulsion. But when you get that super fine, like with a hot dog, there's a tool, and some of you may know it. It's a buffalo chopper, and a buffalo chopper is essentially a tube-like dish that rotates, and then in the housed part of it for safety, there's what looks like a Cuisinart blade.
Yeah.
A food processor blade that spins. And so the meat passes through it over and over and over again, getting finer and finer and finer. And the whole time you're adding your spices and your milk powder, if it's not a kosher hot dog, or your soy protein, which is another additive. Not a bad one, by the way. It's just a way to create a better emulsion.
Okay.
Through adding some, in this case, a kosher ingredient, you can put it in there. You don't have to add either. It just makes it that much harder to achieve the emulsion.
Sure.
And then and on ice, you're adding ice to it to keep it cold again, so it doesn't break, because once you heat it up to a certain point, it's going to break. The fats are going to break apart, and it's ugly. But it goes through, it just repeats over and over and over again until you reach that super fine texture. And what most people don't realize about some of these sausages is just how wet the mix is going to be when it's right. It's way wetter than you think sometimes.
Yeah. Especially with the hot dogs.
Especially with the hot dogs. But with my kielbasa, when that meat is done mixing, it's you're spooning it everywhere. It'll slip through your fingers if you pick it up. And when you smoke it, you can't smoke it flat or your sausage will be like D-shaped because it literally sags down into the grill.
You have to hang it.
You have to hang it for it to be like round, because otherwise it's that soft. It has no substance to hold together on its own. Otherwise, so I don't have a buffalo chopper because they don't make a home version. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So doing super fine emulsions like a hot dog, God, that's hard. Now you jumped in the deep end right off, buddy.
I had no idea.
Bold.
I put mine into food.
You think hot dog? It's so simple. It's got to be easy.
I put my meat in the food processor and
which can be done.
Kind of worked, but it something went wrong and it was a little bit more crumbly.
Yeah, probably.
We still ate them. I'm too cheap to throw it all out, so we ate it.
Oh, I
ate it.
Almost all my failures I ate.
Oh yeah,
and
can't throw it away.
No.
Yeah.
No, venison is too precious, and you can't replace it.
That's true,
right?
You got to wait a year. You can replace it.
Well,
you can try to replace it.
If you're lucky, you have a chance to replace it then.
So all that to say is I have not tried making hot dogs again, but eventually I might.
I would say there are much easier sausages to start with.
Yes,
the two simplest in my mind, uncased. Italian, which you don't have to case. Okay. It's great as a loose sausage or as little patties, or you can just crumble it up to cook on pizza or in your lasagna or whatever you want to do. And then breakfast sausages. Again, not many people are going to put their breakfast sausage in the little casings. You can.
I like the little guys. The sheep's casing are
fun.
Well,
the little sheepskin casings are a nightmare. That's what I'll tell you.
They're not fun to work with.
They're hard to work with. But they tear easily.
But they're beautiful. Like with your scrambled eggs.
Yeah, they are.
So if you have the fortitude, to deal with the casings.
Yeah, for me it's a fidgety thing. It's just when you buy high quality hog casings, you'll put on the horn or the spout, whatever you want to call it. You'll be threading. It's just like it keeps going on. It keeps going on. It keeps going on. And you got like 30 or 40 feet of sausage. Yeah, I can do 15 pounds in one piece of sausage. One piece of casing sometimes, and that's amazing because putting stuff on the horn over and over again takes so much time. It's so tedious, and that's my issue with sheep casing more than anything else. Is it's rarely more than 5 or 6 feet. Yeah, and you just I'm done. Yeah. Oh, it tore. You start over. Oh, I'm done. All right, fine.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you shared some of your breakfast sausage.
Yeah.
Again today, and that was equally beautiful.
Thank you.
And again, it just came from like a pound game bag. Yeah, like I said, you don't need casings for that, and super easy to.
In fact, I like sausage patties more than links, so it feeds into that for me. But yeah, if I was going to say, what do you start with? Do you like breakfast sausage? Make a breakfast sausage.
Make what you're going to eat. Yeah.
Well, make what you're going to eat. You're going to like it. It's really one of the easier sausages to make. It's not an emulsion. It's just some venison, some pork fat, spices, water. Stir until it's really sticky, and then stir a little more. And then package it. If you don't have a stuffer, just form it into rolls or put it in a Ziploc bag. Yeah, whatever works for you. That'll all be fine. And then bring it out and either cut or form patties and fry it up.
Yeah, yeah. So Andy makes moink.
Yeah,
and it's his brisket wild boar sausage, and he just shoves it all in a vac seal bag, and he likes to store his super flat just for freezer organization.
Helps with with thawing too.
Oh yeah, thaws really fast, cooks really easy. But you can form it into patties if you want. You can just cook it like sausage if you want, or just crumbly sausage. And it's beautiful. It works really well. But super very easy.
Yes,
sausage to start with.
These are the easy ones because there's no casing, so you don't have to have a stuffer or a stuffer attachment on your grinder. Which the stuffer attachment on the grinder works okay, but a dedicated piston-driven stuffer, it works so much better,
so much easier,
much easier. Especially and then like I said, we make at the Froman, we generally make somewhere between 10 and 15 recipes.
which is insane to me.
over 2 days.
That's a lot.
Yeah, right.
That is a lot.
It gets to be a bit much, but to be honest, the real issue is not, it's not the grinding, it's not the mixing, it's literally washing between different recipes is the real tedious part. You got to break the grinder down,
Like
wash all those
keeping all the
components.
equipment cold, I think could be a game changing too.
That's a big thing too, and that's why I always do this in February from the get go.
Yep.
One, because hunting season's over, and two, fishing season's over. Football season's over.
Yeah.
Which matters to some people.
Yeah.
And so a couple weeks after the Super Bowl, we all get together. Now, here in Central Indiana, the weather has been good to us, especially this year, but maybe not the best ever. In Chicago, where I was before, it definitely was always cold, except for the really weird year. And that was another part of it, because I set this all up in my garage.
Yeah.
And while we're working, the door's half open, keeping the temperature down. I like to keep the room temperature, if I can, below 45 degrees.
Yeah.
Because that helps with that cold thing. Because, you can buy the ice packs and other stuff to go on the grinder. You can add a little bit of ice. You're adding ice water or even ice cubes to your force meat. But if you can keep the room temperature down, well, then things don't warm up as fast either.
Much. It's shocking how fast your equipment heats up.
Yes.
Especially if you're doing more than one batch. Like your grinder just gets hot.
It does. And the other way to do that maybe is, and I like to do this, is to have the meat as close to frozen as possible.
Yeah.
In fact, if your meat is cold enough, like still holding together froze, but cold enough to cut, or I should say warm enough to cut with a knife.
Yeah.
I call it a tempered frozen.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in that area, that is ideal.
Yeah.
If you can achieve that. Now, obviously, when you get into big batches, we start to get to where things are thawing out and, they're cold, but they're not still froze cold.
Sure.
But if you can do it while things are still like in this tempered frozen state, where the blade will cut easily on your grinder, but but everything is still staying super cold, like literally you got frost on the barrel of the grinder, you're there.
It's money.
That's beautiful.
Yes, sir. Well, real quick, our
Sure.
time is evaporating so quick. Do you have any other hot tips, or maybe like places young cooks might be going wrong, or like our sausage didn't turn out for whatever reason? I know I've got a couple of tips that I've gleaned from you already.
Well, we've
that
kind of
mention,
talked about a little bit here in broader terms. I would say that if you're going to make sausage, the things you absolutely need to watch, regardless of what your recipe says, is the only thing you need to be a slave to in the recipe is the salt content.
Okay.
And I recommend a scale, not volumetric,
Yes.
every time.
100%.
Do it by weight. Because, again, some mistakes I made, I ran out of, most of my recipes in the early days had volumetric measurements for coarse kosher salt.
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you there's a lot more salt in a teaspoon of fine sea salt than there is in coarse kosher salt. And I know this because I made 2 batches of sausage one year that were so salty, the only way they were edible was to basically slow cook them in water. And these were like not sausages you wanted to be cooking that way. But by cooking them that way at first, before browning them, I could sort of leach out some of the extra salt, and they were still too salty. But I ate it because you have to, right?
Yep.
You gotta honor that animal right to the end. But so do your salt by weight, and salt is the only ingredient where it's like absolutely must.
Yeah.
If you're mixing up your sausage and it doesn't seem to be sticking, add a little bit more water. Just add a little bit more. You want that in there.
Yeah.
It won't hurt it. I think there's a myth sometimes. Some people think that by, it's an old butcher's trick. Let's stretch the sausage because we're selling this by the pound, right? We'll put some water in there. No, it's really critical to have that water. So don't be afraid to add water or more liquid. If it's like the, part of the reason why that pheasant sausage is so creamy, that's not water. That's literally whole cream, heavy cream in there. That's what creates that. That's a very German thing. You'll see milk or like milk powder or cream in a lot of those verses.
Yeah.
And it helps add, it helps with binding your emulsion for one, but it also adds that richness, that creaminess to the flavor profile.
That's awesome.
And then, I would say, Match your grind appropriately. Try a different grind. If you don't like the results you're getting, if it doesn't feel quite right to you, try a fatter, a bigger plate or smaller plate. We played around with Italian sausage for a couple years, going back and forth between plates, till we decided on, no, we're going to do this we're going to do a larger plate for our full grind. And then I'm going to take half of it back through again. Mm-hmm. And that was the difference, because I tried the slightly finer plate and it wasn't right. It didn't taste like Italian sausage. The texture just wasn't there. Mm-hmm. So it's experiment. Don't be afraid to experiment. And I haven't talked about this at all.
Keep notes.
Sample. Yeah, keep notes. Keep notes. I mean,
write down what you've done so you remember next year.
Like here, can if everybody can see this, this is from one of my favorite books. Can you see all that?
I'll show it to this camera here. Yeah.
So you see, these are my notes here, and every single recipe that I use has that. Pull up another one here.
Yeah, because we all have preferences. Like, yes, this book was written by somebody who's got their own preferences. We have our own.
Yes.
Chef Allen says we have our own food memories. We have our own.
I like that.
Taste buds. We have our own. For whatever reason, you like this over that.
Right.
It's okay to tweak.
It is. So with sausage making, once you get it together and you feel like the texture's right, set it aside someplace cool, whether it's in the fridge or in the garage outside because it's wintertime and you're crazy. Fry up a sample. And don't add any flavor to it. A little neutral oil. Okay. If you feel better about it, cooking that way, fine. Otherwise, just sausage in a pan, cook it, and try it.
Yeah.
One, it's going to tell you, is it tight enough? Did the bind on the myosin, did that take so that you actually got a good sausage texture? If it didn't, well, you're going to have to mix it up some more, maybe add a little bit more water. If it's good, it's good. And then what's it taste like? And if you're making it with people like we do at the Fromm, and like we make it and we share it around everybody and say, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Beautiful. A little bit of a consensus.
Yeah.
And, some people want their Italian to be a little spicier. They want their breakfast sausage to be a little sweeter. Yeah. Whatever it is, you can make some adjustments to your ingredients while it's still in the mixer. Don't take it out of the mixer yet, because if you want to add more stuff, that's the time to do it.
Yeah.
I find when you add your spices matters.
Okay.
So for instance, like anything that's not going to affect the emulsion too directly, other than the salt itself, I like to hold off on.
Okay.
So for instance, like with your hot dog thing, when I made hot dogs, I didn't add any of those tighteners. Everything, the salt and the other stuff went on cubed meat and into the grinder. Okay. And it went through the grinder, the finest grinder plate, 3 times.
All right.
And this is a little time. It's like a 3 millimeter hole. And it's going through 3 times. But if I'd added any of those things that were going to make it super tight, it would have never made it through. It'd get hung up in the grinder.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So like with the Italians, all the seasoning goes on, everything except the wine. You do add a little bit of wine when you make Italian sausage. Yeah. Everything but that goes on the cubed meat and goes through the grinder. Having something about, I don't know whether it gets forced into the meat better. I'm not sure what it is, to be honest.
They just don't like using their hands to mix it up.
No, but I just know the flavor profile is better. That just the way the flavors meld together is much better when the meat is ground with the spices on it. And so, like, obviously with the stuff that has a lot of the moisture is all going to come later. Once you get that and you put it in the mixer, that's when you're going to add your cream or your milk or whatever. Or if it's milk powder, even, I do that then. Okay. I don't put those through the grinder because it'll tighten up too much. Sure. And it won't want to come through. So, when you look at when to add stuff, I like to add dry spices before the grind, and anything, any other additives come later. Yeah.
Well, speaking of grind, real fast, do you have a hot tip on that second grind? Because I know a lot of times it's like, obviously cubed meat goes through the grinder real quick. Yeah. And I've got one of the meat, I think it's a 1-horse grinder, so it's not small. It's pretty beefy.
Do you know the plate size? Mine's I think it's a 22, which is like
I have 2
3-inch diameter or something like that.
You mean like the throat size?
Yeah.
Or?
Well, no, well, the throat size is going to reflect on from the plate size. Yeah. But yeah, it's the plate size is what matters. Yeah. I would say the easiest thing to do when you're doing that second grind, whether it's only half the batch or the whole batch for a finer sausage, is don't actually try to stuff it any more than you have to. Yeah. try to drop the meat into the grinder.
Yeah. Just bit
and
by
let
bit.
it flow. Just let it flow.
Yeah, because a lot of times it tends to gum up a lot.
Yeah,
and
that's-
especially if I've got the like the stuffer tube.
Yeah.
I just, for whatever reason, mine just can't stuff from the grinder on that second grind.
Yeah, that's why I don't like
So-
the stuffer tube on the
No,
grinder.
it's not ideal.
It's really
So maybe
it-
it's. I think also it's like a temperature thing. So 100%.
Oh yeah,
Cold,
Yeah, you
cold,
can wreck
cold,
a
cold,
sausage
cold.
fast. Yeah.
Well, even just like grinding it a second time is almost impossible if the meat's not cold enough.
Well, the other thing here's a you
In my
need
experience.
you need to make sure your grinding system is actually cutting and not like mushing the meat through the plate.
Yeah.
And to do that is like when the blade and the plate are brand new from the factory, they're all pretty good and sharp, right?
Sure.
If you hit anything hard, piece of bone, piece of shot because you didn't clean your bird well enough or
Yeah.
something like that, it's going to leave a nick. It's going to start creating some problems.
Yeah.
But just in general, like any pair of scissors, which is
gonna
what it
dull.
is essentially, is a rotating scissor.
Yeah.
It's going to get dull. Every year before I fire up and we do all these hundreds of pounds of sausage through the grinder, I take and I hone those surfaces.
Okay.
Which is real easy. Just some wet or dry sandpaper, like 400, 600, 1,000 grit in that sequence. And you just need a good solid flat surface.
Okay.
You know, a piece of tempered glass works. You know, countertop will work. Just make sure you don't make too big a mess. Your wife will have
so you-
things to say to you.
So you're sanding down like the actual plates
Yeah.
and the blade?
Yeah.
Okay.
Think of it's just like
huge
honing,
tip.
just like honing a knife.
Yeah.
So, but the nice part is all these are flat contact surfaces. So you don't have to worry about holding an angle or any of that. You just like put these things, put the sandpaper
That's a
on the deck
phenomenal tip. Like
and just back and forth until it seems even and shiny.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get much better contact between those. It's going to work like the scissor it's supposed to,
Yeah.
instead of just sort of like mushing the meat against the plate and then sort of like mushing it off. And
it's not a Play-Doh molder here.
it is not. No, that's good. It's not a Play-Doh molder.
Yeah.
No, it should be like a rotating scissor.
Yeah.
And cutting off neat chunks.
That makes 100% perfect sense, but I've never thought about it. And no one's ever told me that before. So
Yeah, that to be honest, that comes
that's
from
brilliant.
my I have a background in carpentry and construction, and as a carpenter, it was like I noticed the difference between a good, fresh, sharp tool versus one that was in bad shape immediately.
Oh, yeah.
And it's the exact same thing. If your tools are in good shape and in top condition, you're going to get the best results possible from them.
Love it.
That's true of everything, isn't it?
Yeah. Awesome. Again, we're running short on time here, but another hot tip. Again, we haven't even touched half the stuff I wanted to with you, but we're gonna have a part 2.
Are we gonna have a part 2? We can do a part 2.
The next Froman event. Yeah, we might be chit chatting. You talked about cooking makes or breaks the sausage.
Oh, the whole
And-
cooking sausage. Yeah.
Yes. So again, there's a million other things we could get into as far as the making of the sausage goes. You just need to follow Chris and DM questions. The sausage I made, again, it turned out all right. It's okay.
I like the sausage. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, I'll admit, the way you cooked it, it came out way better than the way I cooked it. So I don't know if we could talk about the process of that. So again, mine's just a basic Hank Shaw. What did we just? I was
I think
embarrassed.
it was venison and like beef brisket for fat.
Well, I was embarrassed. Like Chris asked me, like, what type of hot sausage did you make? I was like, I made brats. Like I don't know what I made. So I had to Google what I made. And it's we'll post it in the show notes. The link to the recipe I used. But again, I cooked it in a skillet. I want to say I probably just cooked it too hot, too fast.
Probably.
And the way you cooked it, let me talk about how you cooked what I brought today.
When you told me it was already smoked, so this is a cooked sausage.
Yes.
That
Smoked
tells
it to
me
140, ice bathed it, cooled it down. So yeah.
Yes, good. So there's basically, when you get into this realm, there's two kinds of sausage. There's going to be raw sausages that need to be cooked, either whether it's the grill or the skillet, or roasted in the oven is an underappreciated way to cook sausage.
Yeah.
If you have to cook it completely, then the approach might be a little bit different. But for a cooked sausage, whether it's my poached pheasant sausage or a poached brat, or the Hank's sausage that you brought, these are already cooked. All you're looking to do is to create a little bit of nice surface on them by browning, and then to warm them up. They don't need cooking per se. They just need to be warm because you don't want to necessarily cold sausage.
Yeah.
So that's all I did. Medium heat and cast iron. And I've learned, make sure things warm up.
Yeah.
So put the skillet on, put your heat on, and don't think about it for the next 5 minutes. Nothing's going to happen. Don't worry. All right. Get the skillet nice and warm. And then I added a little bit of neutral oil and browned both sides completely before I turned the heat down to real low and covered it. And I never went above a medium heat on a gas stove because I don't want to scorch them. I don't want to burn them. I just want to get a little bit of crisp and a little bit of flavor from that Maillard reaction, and there with the proteins, and then let it warm through. And essentially you're letting it rest.
Yeah.
And just like a steak, a sausage needs time to rest after it comes up to temperature.
Yes.
Or the first thing you do when you bite into it or cut into it is all the juices are going to go out everywhere. And then the rest of the sausage is going to be meh.
Yeah. Or, I mean, we've all cooked brats and
Sure.
like on the grill and like all of a sudden the casing explodes and it's launching all its juice everywhere.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily want that to happen.
It's not the end of the world, but yeah you kind of don't. They say don't ever pierce your sausage. Don't, because you're going to drain all that out.
Yeah.
You don't want to, if it happens, but don't ever do it intentionally.
But it was beautiful. Like when you cooked it, like, and I tried a bit of the sausage I made. I'm like, I made this. Like it tasted way better. Just like I said, gentle, a little bit more gentle heat.
Yeah.
A little bit more resting.
Yeah.
The covered, low, slow, like 100% made a massive difference in how that came out. So yes, there's a million ways you could do it wrong making the sausage. There's a million ways you could do it wrong cooking your sausage.
Well, yeah, that's, one of the things. So like, when my grandmother would make, breakfast sausage at home, one thing I learned from her is to be patient with it and to cook it long enough to actually get some brown on it.
Yeah.
Because I've been to too many restaurants, diners, what have you, where I order the sausage and it comes out and it's cooked. It's cooked. That's about the most you can say for it. It's kind of just gray and on maybe even unappetizing on the surface.
Yeah.
And other times you go out and it's got a nice little brown on it, a little bit of crunch, or at least a little bit of chew on the outside, even though it's still nice and moist.
A little bit more snap on the casing.
Yeah. If it's snap on the casing or if it's an uncased sausage, just a little bit of brown and good, good. If not, if not crispy, then chewy, so that it's not just meh.
100%.
Because you're never going to get, if you want good sausage gravy, for one thing, you got to get some serious brown on that sausage. Whether you're doing a crumbled sausage in the gravy or just taking the sausage out and just doing it in the pan, all that's going to give you that good flavor and that good color. That's how you get that. There's no other way to get that.
Yeah.
It's just like every other cooking, whether it's, browning is important, and it's important for sausage as much as it is for a steak.
Yes.
The difference is on a steak, I'm going to cook on much higher heat. For the sear, whereas with the sausage, no, you don't want to destroy the casing.
Right.
So,
yeah. Let's take a pause real quick. I'm going to check my camera.
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Okay. We're back in action here. We had to take a little snack, camera memory card break there. Yes, we've ran through a few hot tips. Like I said, we've just barely scratched the surface on this entire topic. The art of sausage making is its own podcast topic. So
yeah,
the Okayest Cook can't devote that much time to covering sausage making. So again, connect with Chris on Instagram with all of your questions, and find somebody that you can apprentice, for lack of a better word, or find a class.
That's the word I was going to use.
Find a class you can go to.
Yeah. Apprenticeship in cooking is far underappreciated.
Yeah.
Or under talked about. It's one of the few things, like it's craft. Like all crafts,
100%.
You really need somebody who knows what they're doing to show you how to do it.
Especially with sausage.
Especially with sausage.
You need a guide.
Yeah. This is not, you can learn how to get a good sear on a steak from a video. You really can. Yeah. I've learned a lot from videos. But certain things, no, you need to be able to put your hand on it.
Literally,
and this is what it should feel like. Casing sausage.
Well, the consistency. How do you talk about the consistency that it needs to be? It's just you.
Well, I have. You
can talk about it, but
rubbery, plasticky. They all sound horrible and off-putting.
Yeah.
The only descriptors are oddly not food-like.
But until you've done it, once you've done it,
once
then
you've done it,
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's my personality is like, yeah, I can watch something a million times. I can be told something a million times until I do it 100 times. It's not going to sink in. It's not going to make sense.
Yeah, no, that's true. Most of us learn well when we have a chance to be involved in the doing.
Yes.
And then get our hands dirty and do it ourselves while somebody who knows more watches and says, no, don't do that. Oh, no, that's good. Perfect.
Yeah. So again, if you're in or around or feel like traveling to central Indiana, reach out to Chris, see if this is something like you can attend his sausage party. Smoking Goose, I know they do some classes from time to time. So 100% look that up. Just go to your butcher and just say like, hey, do you offer classes? Like, is this something that we could participate in? There's people around you that are making these things, and I'm sure you can find somebody that will allow you into their space to learn how to do this properly.
There's got to be somebody somewhere nearby. I mean, like you said, a lot of the butcher shops these days, they're still going. They have found a niche in our communities as sort of a reservoir, not just of food, but of knowledge. Go to them.
Yes.
I took a great class back when I lived in Chicago.
Talking about it.
Yeah. I took a couple classes with Publican.
Okay.
And Publican Quality Meats, which is in Chicago, and is attached to the Publican restaurant in that chain. What's his name? Paul Kahan, I think, is the restaurateur. I took a couple classes there and learned just an incredible amount.
That's awesome.
That's great stuff. They were talking about, how to butcher a pig and break down a pig into the cuts you expect and know.
Yes.
I'm sure you butcher your own deer. I butcher my own deer. And most of us who are doing that, we don't have band saws. We're doing this essentially as boneless cuts and boneless butchering. And it works. For most of it works great.
Yeah.
But, with a pig, there's certain expectations of cut.
Sure.
So I went and learned this is how you achieve this cut. This is how you do this.
If you do not process your own deer, give it a go.
Yeah, definitely.
Follow the bearded butchers. Like, it's not hard.
No.
You just need to screw up a few times to learn how to do it right. But learning where these cuts come from, I think is super beneficial. And doing it yourself is super, super rewarding.
Yeah. It is. Nothing feels better, I think, from a satisfaction of effort than killing an animal, hunting it down, getting that opportunity, killing it cleanly, field dressing it, bringing it home, butchering it, and then at some point taking that meat out of the freezer and cooking dinner for your family.
Yes.
That is profoundly satisfying. That's really what I love about it.
Yeah.
Is the
Well,
fact
that's
that
why we do this, because we're trying to take out the middleman. And Jeremiah Dowdy from Field to Plate has said it like the most eloquent I've ever heard. And he's just like, the less people that touch this product, the better it becomes.
Yes.
I agree. If I do the hunting, if I do the processing, if I do the cooking, maybe a spouse touches that product as well. Yeah. Maybe not. Maybe. So there's one person involved with the making of this meal. And that's just, it's oddly satisfying, but it's a quality standpoint too. Like, you don't have to rely on a processor.
Yeah.
Who knows what their equipment looks like, and who knows?
Yeah. Who
knows?
I personally have never taken my meat to a processor. I was fortunate that the very first, when I started hunting again as an adult and got into this again, my best friend butchered his own deer, and he was able to show me, here's how I cut it up. Yeah. I've changed some things over the years, but by and large, it's still how I'm cutting up deer. Yeah. And I've cut up deer for myself and others. I don't know, a couple hundred now, at least. And like anything else, you do it more, you get better at it. Mm-hmm. It's a little intimidating the first time.
Very.
And my buddy gave me some really good advice as I'm looking at this deer and going, well, where do I start? And he says, well, anything that doesn't look like you'd want to eat it, get rid of that. Everything else, cut into something, either a steak or
throwing away the testicles.
Stew meat.
Come on.
Actually, I keep those sometimes. They're not bad.
We talked about them in a previous episode, but it's.
Have you tried them?
Yeah. They're hard to eat just mentally, but very, very good flavor. It's like
it does well for me at least. It kind of reminded me of chicken. And no, not the old joke. Tastes like chicken. But it's just a very mild flavor.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
but rich and
we're back to it.
And decadent. It's like
they're creamy. It is just that it's that texture again. That's the closest thing I can think of.
The best thing I could relate it to is like almost like you get a really fatty steak.
Yeah.
And like that fat cap.
Yeah.
Some people eat it, some people just leave it behind, but it's almost like that texture.
Oh, that's
like
a good analogy.
Richness.
I like that. Yes. Yeah, it is rich like that.
It is brilliant. But I think that would make an awesome ingredient to sausage. So if we could, and I forget who I talked to about this on another episode, but like, man, if you make some testicle sausages.
I'd have to think about that. Because
just, again, don't think about it, don't talk about it, but like, I think the flavor's there. Like,
if you don't tell anybody, they won't know.
Probably the most phallic meal you could ever come up with, but yeah.
They don't need to know.
Ask me no questions, I tell you no lies.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've done, like I said, I made scrapple, which I know you've talked about scrapple on one of your other shows. I made scrapple a couple of years ago using nothing but deer internal organs, and there was some pork in there. Again, it's for the fat content, but primarily it was like I had deer shank in there, which I really cooked long and slow until everything was falling off without effort because I wanted that broth, that stock. Yeah. You need that for the scrapple. But and then the shank meat all shredded up and through the grinder. Everything goes through the grinder. But it included deer liver and deer spleen. I mean, I collected everything I could out of that animal, and almost all those internal organs, except for the lungs. I've never eaten lungs. And
no haggis? Come on.
Haggis doesn't have lungs typically. No, it's usually the stomach. And
what has lungs then? What am I thinking of?
You know what? I've never even seen lung on a menu, just because of FDA requirements of contamination. Essentially, what is it? I'll think of it later. The airborne diseases. Sure. They will not. Lungs cannot be permitted for sale. So if you don't shoot them, that's the other issue. Obviously, with some of these things, like I'm sure you eat the heart from your deer. I always keep my hearts unless I've blown them to bits. Yeah. In fact, last fall, I was lucky. I shot one deer in Wyoming, and I made a shot that did not damage the heart in any way. And so I was able to take that heart. I came home. I made venison heart tartare.
Ooh, yeah.
And if you like tartare, and if you don't, what's wrong with you? I mean, really. But it's if you like tartare, heart tartare is beautiful. Okay. Because that cardiac muscle, the heart muscle, is a very different texture than any skeletal muscle. There's no real grain. It's very tender. There's a lot of people who think, well, if it's working all that time, is it good? No, it isn't. It's very, very tender. Yeah. But obviously, if you put a bullet through the heart or something like that, or even an arrow, you've introduced some outside components that may have some things you don't want to ingest. But if you don't damage the heart in harvesting the animal, I strongly encourage you do it. Yeah. Because it's delicious. So those I try to get everything I can. I keep caul fat. Again, depending on conditions. But if everything's right, I'll keep the caul fat. I keep livers. I keep kidneys. And I'm always looking for something else to do with it because I like fried liver. In fact, my wife even likes a little fried liver. But again, it's only so much you can do with it. So I started doing more things, like I did a terrine. Yeah. Essentially, a pate, a country pate with it. And that was pretty good. If you've never done like an English game pie, that's a great way to start using things differently. Because every animal you harvested that year, if you hunt a lot of different things, you can put your turkey in there, you can put some squirrel in there, some pheasant, some rabbit, deer, pig, whatever you've got. It can basically work its way into a game pie. Yeah. And
it's a great spot to use, like I said, these internal organs. Like, we've talked about this a lot, so I apologize for listeners that listen to everything. Like, it's those internal, the awful. It's like our body is craving all these nutrients, and it's hard to eat sometimes. Like, let's be honest. Like, I'm not a big fan of the taste of liver. Right. So finding good ways to hide that liver. Yeah. Chris Ely gave us a great recipe for sausage that had a ton of liver in it. Yep. You would have never known it. So again, the scrapple, like some of these sausages, it's like it's a great place to hide these nutrient-dense organs that are hard to eat by themselves.
Whether it's a texture or a flavor thing, not everybody's going to buy into liver.
Or just the knowledge of like, it's a testicle, or it's a
there's that.
It's a kidney. Like,
I mean, I get that pushback from
Some people don't like that.
just on game.
Yeah.
They're like, I'm not eating venison. I won't. I'm like, you'd never know. I still won't.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things, point of personal pride, I have tried to introduce wild game to as many people as I possibly can over the years. And, there's been a number of approaches to that. Mm-hmm. Certainly the sausage is one of them.
Yeah.
Now I've gotten some pushback online about this, and everybody's got an opinion.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about is how much venison is in my venison sausage. Like, for instance, the breakfast sausage I cooked today. Like a lot of my game sausages that have venison, it's like 35% venison. Mm-hmm. And the rest is a pork product. Usually there's a lot of pork fat, like literally back fat that I order added to it to kind of counteract the leanness of the venison. Mm-hmm. And the rest is just domestic pork shoulder.
Yeah.
This year I happened to shoot a big pig this winter, so I had a lot of wild boar in some of these, and I was able to kind of up the wild element, but at the same time, it's still more of a pork thing. And it's really because of flavor. Venison has a distinct flavor, and I love venison. But just like, how many beef sausages have you ever seen, really?
Yeah.
There's a reason why. Part of it's the quality of the fat. The beef fat just doesn't work in sausage as well as pork does.
Yeah.
But it's also the flavor of it. Mm-hmm. So if you make an Italian sausage and you make it with too much venison, it starts to not taste like Italian sausage.
It's just different.
It's just kind of not right. Whereas if you keep it around to about 4 or maybe 5 pounds in 15, that's actual venison to the pork components, it's going to taste unique. It is not going to taste like an all pork Italian sausage, and nobody who can taste these things is going to mistake the difference.
Yeah.
But it's still going to taste like Italian sausage. You're going to go, oh, that's good Italian sausage. And that's how you get those wild things in there. Give it a unique flavor, but not make it so it's unrecognizable as what you're trying to make. And so most of my sausages, unless there are a few, there are always exceptions. And in this case, it's things like andouille. When I make andouille, it's got a higher level of venison in it because it can. And it works flavor-wise. I make some actual venison sausages, meaning the recipes were created either by myself or where I got it from to season venison. And all you're doing is adding in enough fat to make it work as a sausage.
Yeah.
That's a very different thing. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's real quick before we wrap up here, let's talk about reference material. So we have already talked about Hank Shaw and how I've used his blog. If you have not found Hank Shaw's blog on sausage making, 100% go read that.
Yeah,
it's fascinating, very in depth. But you've got an awesome book here that I need to add to my collection.
This is so. When I first started making sausage, I had a couple of resources and went online like everybody does. I found some things, and like I said, my first efforts were meh. So that year, actually, this was a gift from my mother-in-law who bought me this book. And this is, if you don't know this one, this is Charcuterie by Michael Ruhlman and Brian Polchin. And as far as I'm concerned, this is the Bible if you want to get into sausage making.
Yeah.
It has excellent detailed information on, how to grind, how to mix. The recipes themselves in here are pretty good, although I've doctored almost every single one of them to my taste, as you were talking about earlier. And you can do the same thing. You can add, like I said, the only thing you never want to mess with is the salt. Weigh your salt and don't really mess with that proportion because sausage can get too salty very quickly, and that's very off-putting. But you need a certain amount of sausage for it to work. Again, the interaction of the myosin as well as just seasoning the meat. Yeah. So that's a great book for anybody who's getting into it or wants to get into it or weren't satisfied with their first efforts. Get that and then go from there. Mm-hmm. It also, there's a recipe in here for bacon and other dry cured meats. I've made duck pastrami. No, not duck pastrami, duck prosciutto. Yeah, I've made, from their recipe in here. And again, I found, maybe it's just me and my senses are a little bit dull, but I find that everything was a little under flavored. So virtually everything I made in here, I've amped up the spice quantities.
Yeah.
You know, calls for 3 tablespoons of black pepper. I'm doing a heaping quarter cup, and so forth down the line.
I'm in that same boat.
Right. You know, it's like they say, if a recipe doesn't call for garlic, I'm still adding a clove or two. Unless it's ice cream. I'm not doing garlic ice cream. But short of that, I'm going to add some things because I just know it adds a depth and a flavor that I like.
Well, I love the fact you mentioned this earlier, like just cook a sample. Mm-hmm. You know, test it, taste it as you go, modify it. Like before you stuff it, like that's the best time to modify this flavor.
It's really the only time.
Otherwise, you're like me, and like I cooked like 20 pounds of that sausage, which is awesome. It turned out, luckily. But I'm stuck with that. Like I can't change that sausage.
No, but now you know already. Maybe I cook it a little bit different. It'll be better. It's like I've got sausages that I'll cook in the skillet because it's January and I don't want to go outside because it's cold or snowy or it's just rainy and I don't want to be out in the weather. Yeah. Because my grill is out in the open. It's not in a covered space. But there are certain sausages that just work better on the grill. Yeah. And it's because in the dry heat, that's why I say roasting in the oven for certain things is great because of that dry heat, the skin on the sausage gets a little crisp. Yeah. And it's got that crack and that bite. And that's very different from a sausage that's been cooked in a covered skillet where you don't get that. It's just not going to happen because the conditions aren't there for it to happen. So, you know, certain bratwursts and hot links, like I make a Texas style hot link, those kind of things, they're definitely 100% better on the grill. Yeah. Because you get that little char, you get that little crispiness. It's beautiful that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 100% experiment with your ingredients. Experiment with your process, experiment with cooking methods. Like I said, just me cooking the brats I made versus Chris cooking the brats I made. It's like 100 times different. Very, very different process. So just, if it doesn't come out perfect, tweak it a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to play around with it. Like I 100%. Said, the once you learn the basic method, then that is to say salt, mixing properly and everything becomes sort of like, well, did I try this? I try that. Yeah. If you don't like it, the hardest part I think is learning how to describe what you don't like. Yes. And this is true of all cooking. What is it that I don't like or what is it that I do like? Identifying it but trying to describe it and identify what part of the process led to that result. Yes. Good or bad. That's I think that's a real skill in itself, and it only comes with time and practice and feedback. And you're always going to have that person you should give something to and say, well, what do you think? And they'll be like, oh, it's good. Yeah. What did you like about it? It was tasty. Okay, anything else? Yeah. Well, I just I enjoyed it. Yeah. Thank you. It's like a 4th grade book report. You read it and the teacher says, okay, what'd you think, Chris? I said, I liked it. But
we need more info.
We need more information, a little more depth, a little more clarity. But some people just don't. They don't have that language, that vocabulary. Yeah. And none of us have it to begin with. Like everything, this is a learned skill. You have to learn it. So you have to learn. Like, why isn't it right? Oh, it's the texture. It's not the flavor. Mm-hmm. Or it's the flavor. It doesn't have enough of this. Yeah. It doesn't have enough heat, or it's got too much heat. Yeah. Or it doesn't have enough herbs, or it's got too much herbs, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or it's little things like both of our wives aren't super keen on like the flavor of smoke. And earlier, we were tasting stuff, and your wife mentioned the whole like I like this smoke better than that smoke, and it's like it's the type of wood, it's how long it was on the smoker, it's the type of smoker, and it's just like a million factors.
It's the death of 1,000 variables. It really is, or the life. That's the thing. You get it right, and all you can think is, what did I do? I need to be able to do this again. Oh man, did I write it down? Yep.
So again, grab a notebook.
Like any cooking, whether it's your cookbook or your own notebook on your phone, whatever, keep notes on what you're doing. Because when you get it right, you can go back and say, that's what I did this time. That was so right. There's some things you can't control, which, by the way, I've never noticed. I've made venison now with I've made sausage with like deer venison, both mule deer and whitetail from a dozen different states. And I've added a pronghorn. I've made it, to be honest, because of the amount of spice and the grinding, what have you, I've never had a difference that I can distinguish.
Okay.
But one year I was not very successful in the field. Some stuff was going on. My buddy who I pheasant hunt with had just lost his dog. And so we weren't out very much. I didn't have much pheasant to put in the sausage. And, you know, one of my friends who comes to that Froman event regularly decided, I'll buy pheasant to put in the sausage because I don't want you to not make it. It's my favorite sausage. Yes. We could all taste the difference. It almost tasted like a chicken sausage because, domestic versus wild bird, very, very different flavor.
Yeah.
So that was the one time I thought, wow, there's a difference. Oh, last year after I shot my first wild pig, I made 2 different versions of the kielbasa. One was made with venison and, both were all pork. I take that back. But one was made with all domestic pork and the other was made with wild boar and some domestic fat added. And to a person, everybody agreed the wild boar sausage was better.
Okay.
Just the flavor was richer and more complex and more interesting.
Yeah.
And nobody said, oh, it's gamey, it's off-putting, it tastes, ugh. No one. And this includes, people who don't hunt, don't do any of that.
That's awesome.
So that's why when I had the opportunity with this big pig, I made 45 pounds of it.
Yes.
And it's all wild boar with domestic fat added to get the fat content up where you need it.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's wild pig and it tastes great.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah.
I love it. Well, unfortunately, I think we need to wrap it up. We're a little over on our time.
Sorry, I talked too long.
But again, we've just barely scratched the surface. There's still 100 questions I want to ask you. So maybe we'll get together for part 2, 100%.
Now, put the Froman on your calendar for next year.
100%. Yeah, I will check that out for sure. Do you have a quick recipe to leave us out with as we wrap up the episode here, or any extra hot tips?
I don't know if there's any more hot tips. It's one of those things where to me, the whole process is one big thing.
Yeah.
As far as recipes, you can definitely find recipes for most of the sausages you tried here today. The kielbasa, the sage breakfast sausage, and what was the other one we did? You can definitely find recipes for the sage breakfast sausage, the pheasant sausage, and the kielbasa. All those are on my rather pathetically underwritten website.
Brilliant. Yes.
I do have a WordPress, and they're all on there.
Awesome.
And if they're not, I'll double check later.
Yeah.
I'll get it and get it
actually,
up.
on that note, where can we find you?
Well, I'm Honest Omnivore on Instagram, and just as honest_omnivore, or you can look up Christopher Kyer, Kyer. Either one will take you there.
Awesome.
And then I've got a link to my WordPress page on that.
Perfect. We'll definitely put that in the show notes. Recipes a million times. You guys need to try this white pheasant brat. It was spectacular. It was crazy good. I can't explain it. Just
really
different, creamy, just the mushroom, the pheasant. It was game changing good. Like, I'm gonna go shoot some pheasants now just to make that.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, if you don't know what to do with the birds that are shot up and aren't going to make pretty piccata, this is a great way to use. That's where I started, was using up those extra birds or those extra parts of birds that weren't going to work for other things.
Yeah, 100% keep the legs, put it in the sausage.
Gosh.
Yeah,
the thighs are beautiful. They have just this great flavor. They just need. When you're grinding things up, you don't have to worry about that whole, is it going to be tender or juicy? No, it's fine. You just put it in the grinder and all problems are solved.
Just make sure that lead is out of there. You'll be good.
Yeah, you got to make sure the lead's, and if you're hunting steel shot for whatever reason,
definitely
you got to be extra careful, not just for your diners, but for your equipment. You'll wreck a set of blades and plates.
Yeah, grab a metal detector. I forget what brand is it. It's the one that looks like a carrot.
Right.
It's for like metal detecting coins and whatnot. For steel, that's 100% the way to go.
Yeah.
Lead, you just got to be careful and dig around.
You just got to be careful. Yeah. And any little thing that looks like, the nice thing about it, because you're going to be cutting it up into cubes for the grinder, you're going to see most of it anyway. Yeah. I've had like maybe 1 or 2 pieces of shot find its way through the grinder over 15 years of making this sausage.
Just be diligent. Look for it.
Yeah, be diligent. Like anything else, you take your time, be diligent,
Yeah.
and you should be okay.
Awesome. Well, Chris, this was a phenomenal conversation. Like I'm super excited to put these tips to
Thank you,
use.
Chris. I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely excited to make more sausage. Like it's infinitely less intimidating now.
Good.
Just having a little conversation. And 100%, if you guys have questions, reach out to Chris. Like I'm sure he'd be willing to answer.
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
And-
if you can find me on Instagram, DM me. I'll answer anything as best I can.
Yeah. Very knowledgeable. Super fun conversation, and I can't wait for more.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, sir. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Anytime. Yeah, that was awesome.
Oh, that was a hoot.
We could have sat here for the rest of the day.
Well, I've never been accused of being quiet, so.
Oh, yeah, I got to get back in the drum. I'm late.
You're gonna be late. Yeah, it's
1:30.
it's 1:30.